Welcome, everybody, back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege. Today, September 30th, the final day of the month, and we're going to go over all the action we saw yesterday in Week 4 of the NFL. Not completely done because we have some couple Monday Night Football games on tonight. We're going to preview the first one kicking off at 7:30 between the Dolphins and the Titans, and later on in the show, we're going to preview the other one between the Seahawks and the Detroit Lions, plus some more reactions to the games yesterday, Sunday Night Football, the Buccaneers win over the Eagles, and also the Colts beating the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. All of that coming up on today's show. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you guys, as I always do, if you guys have any questions during the show or any opinions you'd like to share or just comments you want to make, we want to hear about it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we always thrive on any insight or any of your energy that you'd like to share on anything you'd like to say as well. So whether it's a quick comment, question, or opinion, please make sure to share it and don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message stands out and it gets featured on the show and I notice it, you can now use the new Super Chat feature. Just by clicking the $ at the bottom of the chat box, you're able to send in your Super Chat. In this way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel, and we rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and as exciting as possible. We always appreciate it. When you guys are involved with it, there's a lot of action going on in the NFL right now, so the more you guys comment and react to stuff, I always think it makes the show better. Use the Super Chat feature with any comment, question you'd like to use and make available to me during today's show. But now, we could jump into the first segment, previewing one of the Monday Night Football games on tonight. Get this preview up first, just because this is the first of the two games that we have on tonight. The early kickoff at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time between the Titans traveling down to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Not the biggest game tonight based on the record, just performances of these teams, right? The Titans at 0-3 and the Miami Dolphins at 1-2, but instead, what makes this contest still very intriguing is because of what a loss would mean to both of these teams, right? So with the stakes still as high as ever, Tennessee traveled down to Miami trying to get their first win, and Miami trying to kind of stop the bleeding a little bit, with Tyler Huntley now announced as the starter by head coach Mike McDaniel. He will be starting tonight after he was just signed off of the practice squad of the Baltimore Ravens about a couple weeks ago. So, still a lot to look forward to in this game. Like I mentioned, this is the early kickoff. This is their first meeting since last year when they played exactly on December 11th, when the Titans came into Miami again, and they actually beat the Dolphins 28-27, and it was one of Will Levis's best games, I thought, overall in his rookie season. They sort of upset the Dolphins because at that time the Dolphins had a very good record, one of the top offenses in the NFL, obviously, and the Titans came in. I don't think they were playing for too much, but, they came in, they surprised the Dolphins, and Will Levis played very well. Now, we're a long way away from that, obviously, because of all the changes that have gone on, but still, there could be a little bit something there, maybe, because Will Levis, as much as the pressure is on the Titans, a lot of it could be on him as well, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but looking at the Titans first here in our preview, we look at some of the injuries that they're dealing with. Their defensive tackle, Jeffrey Simmons, who I think is their most valuable defensive piece on that side of the ball, didn't practice on Saturday, and he is doubtful with an elbow injury coming into tonight's matchup. I haven't seen any updates on his status as of yet, so we'll keep you updated on that. Also, we have the defensive back for the Tennessee Titans, Chidobe Awuzie. He was placed on the IR, so he's going to be out a minimum of 4 weeks. They're going to be without one of their top defensive backs, obviously. L'Jarius Sneed, up until this moment, I've seen that he is questionable. I don't think he will be out at this point in time, or actually, I do have some of the inactives here Looking at the Titans, Jeffrey Simmons is inactive. So Jeffrey Simmons will not be playing. He did not make the cut. He is out with that elbow injury. I don't see L'Jarius Sneed on here, so he should be good to go. And that's pretty much the two biggest ones for the Tennessee Titans anyway, because Awuzi's obviously on the IR. So Jeffrey Simmons, a big loss tonight, could impact how the Dolphins decide to attack this Titans defense. But moving on, looking back on the game last week for the Tennessee Titans, a rough one against the Packers. The defense really standing out for the Packers in that game because there was just no run game at all, again, for the Titans. And also, Will Levis threw 2 interceptions. He lost the fumble as well. And you look on the other sideline, and their former quarterback, the one that they drafted, I think just last year or 2 years ago, Malik Willis, he showed out. He played one of his, if not the best game of his NFL career against his former team. Now, I think it has more to do with Matt LaFleur and his play calling and his scheme, but still, just adding insult to injury, really, against the Titans, former team, backup for them there, and outplayed their starting quarterback. So I think that's just the way it's gone for the Titans up until this year. Still struggling to get things going on that side of the ball. And also, looking at more of an overall outlook for the Titans in their division, them and the Jaguars are the only still winless teams in that division. The Texans just went up to 3-1. The Colts got a big win against the Steelers. Now they're 2-2. They're right there with the Texans. And now the Titans have an opportunity here to kind of just separate themselves, or at least just keep their heads above water, right? Just because this is a very important game for them, obviously. And, the offensive struggles that I mentioned before with this team, they've only have 4 passing touchdowns so far this year. And DeAndre Hopkins, who arguably is their best weapon on offense, still has not reached 100 yards on the season yet. We're almost 4 games through, and he hasn't gotten to 100 yards yet, which is a problem. And this is where I brought up Will Levis before, because 0-4, if they lose tonight's game, especially to Tyler Huntley, depending on how Will Levis plays, you may consider now changing something at that quarterback position, whether it be going to their backup or, I don't know, maybe signing someone or something like that if they really feel desperate. If Will Levis really puts on another stinker, you could decide maybe that, sort of like Bryce Young, right? Comparing it to that situation, benching him because he's just not ready yet, or, you want to fix other things and don't want to risk losing him too much. You bench him and bring in somebody else, and then that way you try to win as many games now as possible to stay afloat pretty much, because at 0-4, and if the quarterback's playing bad, it's a possibility that I really believe the Titans will consider because of all the changes that they made in the offseason, right? To have it all sort of pretty much end through the first 4 to 5 weeks, it would look very bad. So that is what I believe the Titans are sort of playing for here, obviously. And now the Dolphins, on the other hand, looking at their inactives now, the Dolphins are going to be without their linebacker, David Long Jr. He's going to be out. Raheem Mostert didn't make the cut. They were optimistic about him as well, but he is inactive for tonight's game. And their starting defensive back, Kendall Fuller, as well, is going to be out with a concussion for the Dolphins. And they're coming off of a potentially even uglier loss, against the Seahawks. They only scored 3 points in that game. Skylar Thompson got hurt, adding more reason why they brought in Tyler Huntley. And, now with Huntley and putting on a performance like that in Seattle, you can only really go up from there. So I'm seeing this Tyler Huntley decision to start as just something to kind of spark this offense, because they are too talented to still be 1-3, potentially 1-2, and to only be putting up 3 points is very much unacceptable for this team with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, A-Chain. I know they're still missing a couple pieces, and obviously the quarterback's not the same, but still with those weapons, I believe they're capable to beat this Titans team as well, who are coming in struggling. So it's a very even matchup when you look at it overall with both of these two teams. And, going to 1-3 as well, you're tied for last in the division with New England. It starts to become a little bit rough. Of course, you're helped out a little bit with the Jets and their upcoming schedule, how it's looking. They just lost to the Broncos. Now they're 2-2, and they have the Vikings coming up and then the Buffalo Bills, which will be a big game. So you're kind of right there with the Jets, depending on how they decide to kind of turn up for these games. So 1-3 might not be as detrimental as the Titans going 0-4, but still very much a big game because the Dolphins are trying to kickstart this thing as quickly as possible. And now some of the matchups I'm looking at here that I think will really determine this game. We mentioned before L'Jarius Sneed is going to play tonight going up against Tyreek Hill. If you guys remember last year in the playoff game between the Dolphins and the Chiefs, L'Jarius Sneed completely shut him down. So I'm expecting L'Jarius to follow him everywhere he goes and see who comes out on top. You know, Tyreek, last time they played it in Kansas City, now it's in Miami. Can he have a little bit of revenge there? I'll be looking forward to that. And just some of the factors as well. How successful will Tennessee's defense be without Jeffrey Simmons? You know, he's sort of the catalyst to everything. You know, their pass rush, stopping the run. So how much will the Dolphins also be run heavy, knowing that Jeffrey Simmons isn't going to play? How much are they going to use Tyler Huntley's legs in this situation? All of that is affected by Jeffrey Simmons. He's not going to be in there tonight, so that's going to be a big loss. And the biggest story, I think, just coming from this game, because Will Levis, I believe, is on thin ice. We've seen the sideline reactions from Brian Callahan. Everybody knows that Will Levis should be playing better, making better decisions. And so tonight, can we see a cleaner, better performance against a team that last year he had one of his best games against down here in Miami as well? And because of that, I'll be rooting for Will Levis. I believe they have enough to get it done. Having Tyler Huntley come in 2 weeks off of the practice squad from the Ravens. You started Skylar Thompson last week. I don't know how much time these receivers really have had with Tyler Huntley up until now. So I'm going to go with the Titans in this one just barely. I'm sensing a low-scoring game, but I feel like Will Levis will play a cleaner game, won't make too many mistakes. And also, speaking about talent, they have an abundance of it as well. Tyler Boyd, Calvin Ridley, and DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, as well. They should have enough to barely beat this Dolphins depleted roster. So I'm going with the Titans over the Dolphins in one of the doubleheader games that we have on tonight. And on that note, we're not going to get to the second game yet. We'll save that till later. But we're going to review some of the games from yesterday, starting with last night. An absolute rout of the Buffalo Bills over, or from the Baltimore Ravens, in that sense. The Ravens proving a point with that massive win at home over the Bills. And we're going to talk about Derrick Henry's performance, impressed with what the Ravens did, but also a little disappointed with what the Bills did as well. So stick around. We're going to come back to that segment when we return after this break.